Hey there, listeners, and welcome to Project Zero, where we hear about the journeys of some of the best project leaders in the game. My name's Alex Tuck, and I am the host. I'm here with project management trainer at Scaling Strategies, John Connolly. Welcome to the podcast, John.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about your Project Zero and all the advice you have to go with it.
Yes, I have a large variety of experiences and usually a strength.
Yeah, and very interesting background. I can't wait for the guests to hear it. John, why don't you start us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Sure. So I'm a project management trainer, like all around expert with Scaling Strategies. We're based in the Washington, D.C. area. I live in Northern Virginia, Northwestern Virginia, really. Pretty rural area, but I'm close enough to the city to get in there when I need to. I do training for PMP, but primarily it's more about skill set building, right? It's not about the certifications for me. It's always been about getting the skills that PMs need to succeed in the role, not just about getting the role. It's not A to B, it's B to C for so many people who are in the fields. I'm focused in that area. I'm also just opening up my PhD program. So I'm interested in PMOs and institutional learning applied to project management. There's all kinds of fun things that's going on over there for me as well. Right now, I'm expanding, developing new workshops for people who are in project realm, who are looking to grow meeting management and better communication, executive presence, things that I think are going to serve project managers over the long haul.
Nice. I love that. I might ask you a few questions about your PhD throughout this. So everyone stay tuned for that. But first, John, tell us a little bit about how you got started in project management.
Sure. So you got to go way back for me. And I've had, again, such a variety of things in my career. I got started a few years after I graduated college. I got started in librarianship. I went to school. I got my master's in library and information studies. I worked in data. I worked in databases. I worked in cataloging, and I worked in software. And after library school, I got my first full-time librarian job. It was for a small art museum with a library that had books dating back to 1523. So it was the most interesting and unique collection is a collection dedicated to equestrian sports. It was a very niche topic. And I'd been there for 2 weeks when the head librarian quit. And I was promoted and I was in charge of the library and flying by the seat of my pants, basically. And we started to look around and I opened up closets and I opened up drawers and I started to find a mess. I found damaged books from the 18th century that were in rooms without temperature or humidity control. I found boxes and boxes of archives. The library was out of space. We were going to have to expand in some way. There were projects everywhere. And I did not know exactly how to tackle them because 2 weeks after I was promoted was our big board of directors meeting. And my job was now to assemble a report to the board about the state of the library. So very dutifully, right, I wrote up a long list of all the problems. And I walked into the room, but I didn't bring any solutions with me. And I made this wonderful report, very long-winded report, talking about all the problems, all the impacts, how everything was going to be terrible. And you could have heard a pin drop around the table. And one of the board of directors, a very high-powered board of directors, very wealthy people, one of them stood up and he said, "So what's your plan?" And I almost laughed at him. I was like, "I don't have a plan. I've been here for a cup of coffee." And I was at a crossroads at that moment. Like, I didn't realize it at the time, but that was a huge career crossroads moment for me. And I turned to him, I said, "I don't have a plan, but by the time we meet again, I'm going to have a plan for you." And that was when I became a project manager. And from there, I began to work on a plan and we began to execute according to the plan. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was inventing project management for myself. And I think a lot of project managers get started there. We don't start with training on project management. We start by doing projects and then later we get training to grow. And I realized shortly after that meeting, nothing in our collection was cataloged. You couldn't find anything. There were books that were just, they were in the building, rare books, manuscript books from ancient like days, and nobody knew we had them because no one could find them. There was no place to look to see if we had them. Most of the books were marked with pencil on the inside cover. So if you wanted to know where it shelved, you had to open the book. Nothing was where it belonged. Over the next 5 years, we expanded collection space. We retooled the direction of the collection. We cataloged every book. We hired an additional full-time librarian to help me. We had to, it's a nonprofit, right? Art museum. We didn't have an endowment. We had to fundraise for everything. So it was very hand to mouth. I helped raise anyway, at least $1 million over those 5 years to support our projects. And we completed it. We rocked it. And we got to the end of that 5 years, and the last box was checked. We closed out the last portion of the project. And less than 6 months later, I moved on to another role. And over time, I've learned the vocabulary of projects. Several years later, I went and got my PMP, and I was very surprised. I said, these are things that I already do, but I just didn't know that there's already like a set of terms and a set of descriptors. And I look around and I say, a lot of these tools and techniques things, they would have been really handy for me 7 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But that's life, right? So that was project zero for me, right? And I got a crash course in stakeholder engagement and stakeholder management that many people don't get. I had a very, very high-powered board of directors. A library committee served as my project steering committee. And that steering committee was chaired by Jacqueline B. Mars, the wealthiest resident of the Commonwealth of Virginia, like of Mars Candy. And she needed to be plugged in, and I had to build trust, and I had to help everyone understand that I had competencies, that I could be a strategic advisor, not just a task executor. And so it was the mindset shift, right, in that first board meeting, that I went from being someone waiting to be told how to do a task to somebody who went to planning, guiding, and trust building within the process, right? Setting the process, setting a strategic direction, and helping strategic leaders meet their strategic goals.
So cool. My 9-year-old would love to ask you a million questions about being a library leader. Like she wants to be a librarian right now so bad.
Yes.
She loves it. She's actually part of this young librarians club. That's awesome. Love it. Wow, that's a heck of a project zero. How long did it take you to build the trust of the board of directors? Was it 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 5 meetings? Like, when did they start to believe that this plan was going to come to fruition?
It was a gradual thing. I feel like I was pretty well established by about 6 months in. And the board wasn't there all the time. And I had to really learn to right size my communication, because my impulse up to that point was to run to them for permission for everything, right? I had to learn the balance and the art that was not explicit of what should I be doing on my own, what could I be doing on my own, and what I must not be doing on my own. And fortunately, I had an executive director who was very helpful in guiding me. And she was very clear with me. She said, look, more about librarianship than I do. I can't help you with the books. But when you find something and you want to do something, you have to come back to me and say, here's the problem. And then I want to do this, to say this is what will solve the problem in my professional opinion. So it wasn't just trust building with my stakeholders. It was also learning to trust myself. It was learning to trust my skills and abilities to plan and design and follow through and strategize and working as a bridge between the tactical and the strategic. I think within about 6 months, I've established myself as being capable. But when it came down to like trustworthy, it was one of those, maybe about a year in, I had really solidified myself as trustworthy. And those high-powered stakeholders began to donate money to help me accomplish the tasks that I needed to do because I was able to communicate with them, understand the strategic direction they wanted, and then also to help them see clearly how I was giving them the results that they wanted. I was no longer outputs oriented. I was outcomes oriented.
Love that. Yeah, that's such an important piece of advice, right? Like
Yeah.
just be like that's something that early stage we all were there, right? We were all there where it's just, oh, I need my risk register and I need to check these things off and and we got the task done, but did that add any value? Like, did you actually
Right.
accomplish something? That's the hard part.
Yes. And that a lot, especially people, they go get the formal training and it's okay, great. You're right. Risk register and my issue log and my change orders and all these different things. And everything goes wrong. And they come back, they're like, I don't know why everything went wrong. I followed the rules. I did what I was supposed to. I'm like, yeah, you wrote it all down. Did you actually manage the situation? You
Yep.
still have to manage, right? You still have to do the thing. The doing of the thing is more important than the documentation of the thing sometimes.
Yeah,
Actually, many times.
that's right.
And we are not just record keepers of tasks. If we are record keepers of tasks, then that's a thing that technology will erase from the profession, right? That's a thing that currently, right now, we're seeing all this disruption and what it's tearing away the task level, right? The very basic level. And what I like to tell people who come to my workshops is you cannot have the luxury as a project manager of going into an office, shutting the door, opening an Excel spreadsheet, and managing that way. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
I don't know if it ever did work. But if it's very clear to me that it doesn't work now and it won't work moving forward, right? That the future of project management does not look like a Gantt chart.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I've been a huge proponent of I try not even to use, even though it's all over my website, try not to use project management that much, at least when I'm having conversations with people, because project management is it's so rigid. But I try to talk about project leadership, right? That's what you're creating, right, John, is like trying to create these project leaders that are going to guide people, right? Versus just
Yes.
tell people what to do. And if you're going to manage anything, let's call it like the actual project, like actual tasks, but you're really leading the people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that you say that because I was speaking just recently with a project manager who spent a long time in the military and then went into education for many years and now is a project manager at a very big global organization. And she was telling me about the things that have helped her. And the education stuff has helped her tremendously because she's always developing her team, but also developing her stakeholders. And that's a different skill set, right? And project management has this reputation of being very, you're right, rigid structure, right? We're there to set down rules. We're there to tell people no. And we're always about scope creep and the iron triangle and all of these things. And that stuff's not bad, but that's no longer, or I don't, it's the heart of project management, right? The heart of project management is getting groups of people to all pull the rope in the same direction at the same time for a common cause. PMI was founded in 1969. They landed a person on the moon without the 49 processes being defined.
Mm-hmm.
They built the pyramids without ITTOs, right? They constructed Notre Dame Cathedral without a risk register or all the different things that we have. And these tools are good. They're good tools, but they're not the essence of what we do.
Love it. Couldn't say it any better. Love it. All right. So Project Zero, one more question, then would love to get into some more advice. Was there any big issue that popped up in those 5 years of that project? Like some really big snafu that you had to dig out of that still sticks in the back of your head and you still carry it forward as a project manager today?
I think the main thing for me was learning to communicate adequately. That I was very blunt a lot of times, and I had bad mental habits that were informed by my bad verbal habits. And a big turning point for me, again, like not just in that role, but in my career, was my executive director called me in to her office one day and said, "Shut the door. Sit down." She said, "You have a problem." And I was like, "Okay, what's my problem?" And she said, "You don't talk like you're part of our team."
Mm,
She said, you have an I and you problem, right? Not a we perspective." I never said we. I always, and so for a long time, I put myself on an island from the team, and it led to conflict. And there's some conflict in there that I feel a little embarrassed by looking back, right? It
mm,
wasn't about the ideas, it was more about personality. And I was not doing what I needed to do on a communication level, on an empathy level to be effective. I like to tell people now that project managers don't have the luxury of grudges,
mm.
and that I've seen some very hardworking project managers who are capped in their effectiveness because they're addicted to the word should.
Mhm.
Oh, life should be this way. I shouldn't have to say that or do that or be that. He should have done this. And you can be right, is what I've learned. You could be right every day. And actually, most project managers that say should, they are right. You be right every day of the week. Nobody cares. They don't care. They care if you got across the finish line with the project. That's what you were hired to do. You weren't hired to be nice, but you weren't hired to be mean either. You weren't hired there to make the world as it should be. You have to live in the world as it is. And I was very bad at that. And it took a long time for me to rewire my brain. And I had to put myself on a we footing. I had to begin to think strategically about partnership as being a major tool in my toolbox. If project managers can't be partners, project managers can't really get anything done, because the law of the universe is that the person you don't want to talk to will eventually have what you need to get your project done. So that's like the area. It's not like one particular issue on the project that arose. It's more like a realization over time that I lacked a level of maturity for the level I was at. And I
Yeah.
had to grow quickly into a level of maturity to make that project successful and make myself successful within it. So that's my main focus when I look back. The things that are like the trip ups. There was a time like I was in people's faces, like very aggressive with them. It was not good. It was not good. And I regret some of those things. But by the time I left, I was on a much better track, and I had managed to accomplish some of the things that I needed to accomplish. And it has changed the direction for me, right? I wouldn't be here talking to you now if that difficult conversation with my executive director had not happened.
Yeah. What a great mentor. That's so good. We all have one or two of those, or maybe more, if you're lucky, mentors that can tell you something that you really need to hear that you
Yes.
don't want to hear. No, but you just described the power of we, right? And I tell all my team, whether it's you're focused on sales, whether you're focused on delivering a project, whatever it is, or even someone I'm trying to mentor, if you can get on the same side of the table as the person you're trying to work with, right? Instead of across the table, you get so much done, right? The guards get dropped, right? And you're trying to work together to figure out a solution, even if it is a customer, even if it's a tough customer, right? That you're struggling with, you're not getting it, right? But if you can figure out how to sit on the same side of the table as them and bring them forward, it's such a good piece of advice. I'm glad you got that early in your career, because some people don't get it for decades, right? So,
Yes. Yeah.
oh, geez. All right, cool. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but let's see. Let's get into some advice. What's the number one skill that you think project managers need, and why?
I think that every project's very unique, of course, and project managers unique as well. But the things that serve project managers over the long term are usually the same, in my opinion. That's things like communication level. And it's not, when I say communication, I do not mean writing reports or emails, right? I think that there's two things that I'll say, because I can't just pick one. The first is, can you generate consensus, right? Can you build enough rapport to turn that into action, right? It's not enough to just be on good terms with everyone. You have to have the art of being able to get everyone on board and doing things. That's a human thing, right? It's not a process thing. And we're process-driven project managers. We're very analytical. But frankly, you can have the perfect process. People still won't follow it. If you can have a perfect process, then, you don't need a project manager, right? If you had a perfect process and everyone would follow it, there's no need for project management. So the distinguishing factor, right? The distinction of having a project manager is the ability to get people to move to action. That's a communication thing, but it's also a political awareness thing and a negotiation thing. And so this is where I'm growing, developing, building out, and administering like hands-on workshops. It's not about training. I can't sit in the front of the room with a PowerPoint and tell you how to negotiate well. But what I can do is be a hub for project managers to come together from a variety of contexts and workshop in their hands-on way what works for them and what does not, the sharing of experience. So that's one. The other one is future oriented for me, right? It's not just what works now, but it's going to be of tremendous importance in the future. That is critical thinking. We live in a world where now you don't know what's real online anymore and what isn't. It used to be deep fakes. Now it's just everything AI generated. It's getting better and better. It's harder and harder to see what's real, what's reliable. And I think in the future, the number one skill that will serve project managers well is critical thinking and healthy skepticism. To say, that sounds good or that sounds bad. And I'm going to take the moment to pause, right? I'm going to have the patience to analyze. And this is the area where AI is very powerful and it's stripping away the task level, but all that's left is the human level. And we're still going to have to make sure that the bots get the work done. And insofar as that goes, you as the human have to not be a cog in that machine. You have to let the machine work for you, which means being above it. And that means critical thinking. So anything that people can do to develop critical thought, removing themselves from the algorithm, from the thought, reading a variety of topics, understanding good research practices. There are a lot of things involved there. And if this sounds librarian tangential, you're right, it is.
I love it. Honestly, that's not good advice for project managers. That is just good advice for humans, right? Focus on critical thinking, read some books on it, because we're going to need that skill set in the future. Every single person's going to need it. Yeah. I love that piece of advice. And I love that you chose two. I can't just choose one.
I got a double dip.
Yeah, I got a double dip. You talked about AI. Tell me, how is AI going to change project management over the next decade?
I think that I am both optimistic about AI's impact on project management, but also a little pessimistic about the staying power of AI to last for the next 10 years. So I'm not saying that AI is going to go away. What I think is that it's capped in its overall utility and that it will not continue to grow exponentially in its abilities. I think there's a limit. And that limit is going to be up against the really effective human nature type things. So I think that many companies right now in our moment, 2025, in the summer, they're shedding staff because they think that AI will be able to replace them. My suspicion is that in 5 years, those companies will have slowly hired back their workforce, because AI can augment, but it can't really replace. Especially if you have exercising of critical thought, you need people to check the bot. It's not 100% accurate. And if there's no one at the wheel, then you're going to run off the road. So that's one area where I think that it's going to be very helpful, but it's limited in its utility, which means on the other side of that coin, project managers have a tremendous opportunity and the future is quite bright. But what we think of as project management today and what we've thought of project management historically, those things you were talking about, the reputational things, that's dying. That's not going to be there in 5 years. I think that project management needs to recenter itself on leadership and strategic guides. And that's going to be the distinguishing factor for a project manager in the next 5, 7, 10 years, is that the page is already turning or already has turned and we haven't even realized it yet. The future, in my opinion, is not on the tools. It's not. The future is in your ability to communicate on an executive level, right? Can you walk into the C-suite and not be cowed? Can you communicate in a way that can establish you as someone with the same trust we were just talking about, right? Not just someone who can get the job done, but someone who can inform the strategic decisions moving forward, because projects will still continue to be important. You're not just someone who's carrying water for tasks. You're someone who's there to deliver broader organizational benefits that the organization wants and clarify those up. There's Adrian Dooley, who's a project manager in the UK. He's a great guy, very good thinker. Follow him on LinkedIn. He wrote a chapter for a book I edited last year called Executing Excellence. And he wrote about this study in Canada. They studied why many projects fail. And what they found with many stakeholders and their responses were, it would have been helpful if we did any kind of business case before we did a project. Like a tremendous number of them said we had no business case of any kind. So there was no actual clarity around what was even desired from the project.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, most project managers don't think about that very much. And I've talked to project managers established in their careers who say, that's not my job.
Mm.
Well, I'm sorry to report, it is your job. And actually, that's all the job will be in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know a single PM that got their PMP 5 years ago that's, man, I wish I got to take meeting notes and send out action items to people.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
Everyone, like, the new tools are so amazing for that, right? They take better notes than I do. Hands down.
Yeah.
Actually, could probably use a little work, but the basics of like transcription and meeting notes, oh my God, what did we do without that before? But what do you do with those afterward? That's what we need to focus on. How do you take those things and lead people?
It's processes that lead to something, right? This is a story, right? Everything's a story, right? Again, librarian over here, books and stories. Everything is a story, and everyone wants happily ever after. We're not in the basic process that there's no ending. There is an ending. They want an ending. We want an ending. There's a purpose to it all. If you can't dial into purpose, then you're wasting your effort because you will drift. There's first act, a second act, a third act. You're moving toward happily ever after, right? How things end. And you cannot lose track of that, the forest for the trees type phenomenon. And if you can dial into what the story of the project is and your role in it and understand that you're not the hero, that's incredibly powerful. It alleviates some of the psychological burden of project management. And on the other side, it helps you truly clarify with the people who are most invested, right? Maybe your senior stakeholders are the princess in the castle waiting to be rescued. You have to help them understand clearly, what does it even mean? There has to be meaning. And this is why AI is very limited for us, is because human existence is about creating and understanding meaning. And that's project management, right? Project management giving clarity and focus to that meaning, the ability to lay out the steps to get to the end so that we can accomplish something meaningful. And so project management is deeply, I believe, human and essential. And the most successful project managers can dial into their humanity in a deep way. It's not a science, it's an art.
Love it. We got to end on that. That was too good to not end on, John. All right. Tell us how people can connect with you.
I am on LinkedIn. You'll find me around posting and such. You can also email me, jconnolly@v3model.com. That's V as in Victor, the number 3, and then model.com.
Awesome. Well, John, thanks so much. That was a great session. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thanks to everyone that joined us at Project Zero this week. Be sure to subscribe to Project Zero wherever you get your podcasts. And we will catch you next time with another great project leader. Everyone have a good one. Thanks again, John.